is there any right-thinking American who believes that you can fine someone 35 or 40 times what they've made in a lifetime, and that's okay? The Eighth Amendment to the Constitution protects citizens from excessive bail, fines, and cruel and unusual punishment. Call me crazy, but I think a fine of 35 or 40 times what a person has made in their lifetime, that seems like an excessive fine, as well as cruel and unusual. Violates both. He's been violated with the First and the Eighth Amendments. So his property was being auctioned off last week. And there's some developments that have happened since. So let's welcome Alex to the show. Alex, thanks for coming on. Welcome to The Blaze.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I've got huge updates that I'm going to break here.
Okay.
But first, let me just be 100% clear. And I don't blame you and others for not knowing exactly what happened, because I didn't figure it out until the second show trial in Connecticut 2 years ago, right at this time, but almost exactly 2 years ago at this time. They had one in Austin, Texas, in a controlled Democrat judge's jurisdiction, and then one up in Connecticut. I mean, how do you get a fair trial right where it happened? So here's what I want people to know. 12 years ago, coming up with the 12th anniversary, 12 years ago, right around this time of the year, Adam Lanza gets a gun that his mother legally bought, a Remington Bushmaster. He takes it illegally and kills all those kids.
Right.
Now, the internet doesn't believe it. The internet, hundreds of millions of views on YouTube just of one video that another person made. I barely cover it. The first year or so, say, okay, yeah, it happened. I cover the controversy, and then I don't cover it for years after years after years. Then Hillary decides to run against Trump and buys $24 million, according to her filings, of Sandy Hook ads with a short clip of me saying, yeah, totally fake. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then I get deplatformed everywhere for other stuff the media made up, but not for that. And then in 2018, they sue me and then say I didn't give discovery, so they default me and find me guilty. So the judges then have trials on damages, but pretend like they're actually real trials and let them put on fake evidence, but I'm unable to defend myself. So that's all on record. That's what happened. Then they asked for $2.76 trillion. I know that doesn't sound true. Just type in Alex Jones.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about the $2.76 trillion. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. See, people don't believe me. I wouldn't believe me either.
No, it's true. We've looked into that. It is absolutely true.
So yeah, Bloomberg, AP, you name it.
Yep.
Type in Alex Jones, $2.76 trillion. That's the GDP of India. So then,
so you didn't have the GDP of India on hand?
No, I'm not Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck did his research when I was on last week, and he said, because it's actually ended up in the bankruptcy came out, that I made about $55 million in the last 30 years on air that I kept. So,
well, I think that's about what you told us when we talked to you a few months ago. Was it in your lifetime you've made 50 or 55 million, right?
Yeah. And again, I was audited on my own expense to the tune of $3 million by the federal judge when they made all the accusations when I went bankrupt 2 years ago. They said, Your Honor, he's hiding $360 million. They just pulled out of the air. He said, fine, I'll instruct Free Speech Systems to have outside accounting firms. They had 3 different ones come in over the last years, and the judge said in court on June 14th when he fired the federal guy over my case, he said, no, Mr. Jones told the truth. None of what you guys said was true. And then he fired the U.S. trustee and the rest of them. So then I was in personal bankruptcy over my company. The judge said, but you can order a liquidation. Then they said in the liquidation, the lawyers on the other side wanted my name, my likeness. The judge in a hearing a month ago said they couldn't have it. He said he wanted hearings about that before the liquidation. So the U.S. trustee assigned by the Justice Department, because the Justice Department can come into rare cases because, quote, public interest, saying I was a crook, went ahead and had the auction last Wednesday. But 2 days before, on Monday, the 11th, he changes the rules and says no longer will be a public auction with a big online respected auction firm. He said by Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., I will take sealed bids from bidders, and I will choose the winner, and I choose to take one that's lower if I want. Those are the new rules. He said he had the right under the judge's order, which the judge said in an emergency hearing last Thursday that Elon Musk lawyers, by the way, came into. The judge said, I did not authorize this. This was not an auction. Everyone should be very uncomfortable about this so-called auction. And he ordered an evidentiary hearing that he hasn't set yet. So here's the update. There was no auction. By the way, without a judge's order certifying the sale, any of it, they came in, the U.S. trustee on Thursday morning, threw us out of the building, literally cut the power to the studios, cut the refeeds off. So literally commandeered, or in my opinion, hijacked the building. So that's a huge issue that happened. And then they announced everywhere that they owned it and it was theirs. Then he had to release the, quote, bidding information to the other, quote, bidders. They got the information Thursday night, and here's the breaking news. And then this will all be in the news by this afternoon. I'll just stop right there, and it'll all be with exhibits. Everybody will be able to see it. I'm just going to stop there, but that's not to say anymore. They are crazy enough, the plaintiffs, to add an addendum document to their sealed bid in an auction that didn't happen, that was a private sale disguised as a bid, detailing how they directed the U.S. trustee and how they control the process and how they came to the directive that they were in control of the process and how they directed the so-called auctions. Now, in the rules of federal bankruptcy auctions, let's just say this, it was perfectly to the letter violated at every level. I mean, if this was golf, this would be a hole-in-one, but a negative hole-in-one. Absolute, total perfection of corruption. My lawyers never say things are a slam dunk. They never say things are cut and dry. And they're very respected bankruptcy lawyers. They say they've never even heard of anything like this. The whole thing is so comical. So that's why when the so-called Onion owner went on Good Morning America with Stephanopoulos Friday, and Stephanopoulos said, I heard you didn't have the biggest bid. He goes, well, we had the best bid. And that's what the U.S. trustee, Chris Murray of Houston, you can look it up, it's all over the news. So I mean, Chris Murray, Alex Jones, you'll see him say, well, it wasn't the biggest bid, but it was the best bid. So 2 days before they change it, make it secret, no longer is it public, no longer can you bid. The definition of an auction is property sold to the highest bidder. Now it is a so-called auction that never happened. They seized the building without a court order, which is basically piracy, and complete color of law. A cop who is a cop can't off-duty put on his uniform and start going out and pulling over, hot chicks. He goes to prison for that. So basically, they totally overreached their authority. This is cut and dry. The judge, just on the face of it, said, wait a minute, this wasn't public. You couldn't bid up. I didn't even authorize this auction. I told you to have hearings. I authorized a future auction. I did not authorize an auction. I told you at the last hearing this. You exceeded your authority. I'm going to get to the bottom of this on an evidentiary hearing. Well, we thought we had to depose the U.S. trustee and his lawyers, a guy named Wolfshaw. We thought we had to get all that. Well, it turns out they thought hiding in plain view was the way to go and added an addendum again to their so-called bid that details how they brought in 15 different groups to combine and claim, now get ready for this, that my $1.5 billion that I so-called owe them that is on appeal, that is not seen in any court of law as a money, it's not even like a derivative, would be pledged, part of it, towards this. So they pledged my future earnings in a judgment that they had not perfected towards the purchase and did not even put the cash in for it. And they call that the best bid. And that's why when he was asked by the judge, Chris Murray, last week, Judge Chris Lopez, what was the winning bid? And you can read this in Bloomberg. Chris Lopez says, I cannot tell you how much money it was because it gets better. In their addendum, they explain that they filed with it, with their so-called bid, they explain that no matter what other bidders bid, they would then leverage up to the $1.5 billion judgment, any amount needed to outbid someone. And it says right in the auction rule, it's best and final, and you must disclose your bid and then publicly disclose each bid. But this wasn't even a bid. It wasn't even an auction. And it was a secret lever, like in a video game where you have unlimited lives or like a card game. where you have 100 decks with any card you want, but they're not up your sleeve. They're on the table, and you're playing somebody who's playing fairly out of one deck, and you have, hell, not 100 decks. You have 1.5 billion cards that you have stacked on the table, a giant warehouse of cards, and you're playing someone who's playing out of one deck fairly. That is literally the definition and the perfect analogy of what happened, my friend.
Wow. I mean, it's stunning. It's so un-American. It's just almost impossible to get your head around this. Now, is it what we've been reading over the last week or so is that the Sandy Hook families got together and decided on an $80 million settlement that they would accept that? Is there any truth to that? Or are they still insisting on the $1.5 billion?
Yes, let me tell you what happened. And this is all in the news. And I couldn't talk about this because it was in sealed mediations in Connecticut with a federal judge. They wanted actual federal judges in courthouses. This is on the eve of the last trial two and a half years ago. And in a courthouse this year, 7 months ago in Fort Worth, Texas, in the federal courthouse. So I'm there for 2 days each time. Now, 1 day in Connecticut, 2 days in Texas. And the lawyers from Texas and Connecticut come in and they say, listen, we're going to beat you. There's nothing you can do. And we basically want almost all your earnings in the future. And I went out with my lawyers in the hall and I said, watch, they're going to want me to politically change. No amount of money will they take. I said, let's go in and say, what do they want? So we go in, and in Connecticut was the first time, and the head of their law firm, Josh Koskoff, looks at me and he says, listen, he says, we are like The Godfather. You seen that movie? And I go, yeah. And he goes, we own this state. There's nothing you can do. And he goes, you're going to be talked to after this. He goes, I want to meet privately with your lawyer. So we leave, go to a restaurant after with my lawyer, and his name's Norm Pattis, very respected, and he's a witness to this. And Norm Pattis says, they want you to agree to stop talking about the Second Amendment. And I said, let me guess, there's more. And he goes, yes. Off record, they're going to provide a list. So it was literally sell out to them, and they were just going to drop it if I would become their creature. Then Texas did the same thing, but then separately in phone calls to my lawyers, not off record, they came back and both groups said the same thing. And then it gets worse. In court hearings in the last 3 months, they told the judge, we're ready to settle, but we have a list of demands about what he'll say and do on the air. And they pin it on he won't talk about us anymore. But then there's a whole other list of things they're going to provide that are political. So, yes, they said, first I offered them at the new mediations this year, post-judgment, $70 million. I said, that's more than I've ever made in 30 years. I said, I'll offer you $70 million over 10. They said, no, we want $86 million. And then I said, there's no way I can do that. They said, okay, well, we'll go down if we have a list of demands. I said, let me guess, it's the same thing. It's a bunch of, they said, yeah, we got to get you the list. And I said, nope, I'm not doing it. It's over. And so that's it. So they don't want money. They've always said they don't want any money. They're all over the news saying they want to silence me. And what's crazy is they think they've already had this Texas, Austin, literal globalist, pro-Antifa, Soros-funded judge. Same thing up in Connecticut. You can look them up. And the whole time they have just demanded that I do this. But now they're actually in a court where it's an actual judge, and they tried the same crap. So when this all comes out, and I'm telling you, I'm just going to stop here. You won't have to believe me. You won't have to believe our filings. Attached to all this is all the documents. And I'm just going to stop there and just tell you that this is absolutely beyond epic. And I'm in the twilight zone. And I agree with you, Pat. I can't even wrap my mind around this. And just understand this. I literally was thrown out at 10:30 out of the building. I went on one of my other talk show host shows, took over Harris Smith's show at 8 a.m. They're in the building telling me get off. They're in the building saying we're going to go to the judge and get you in trouble. I said, you don't have a document. The judge said that this auction wasn't approved yet. So they just call the internet service providers and cut the power. Then they order the employees on penalty of violating court orders with no documents in their hand to cut the feed. I said, fine, I'm not putting the crew in this position. I said, I'm leaving. I drove 3 miles to my other backup studio for the Alex Jones Network. That's literally just a small little pocket studio. And before I get there, I get the call. They said, yeah, they just ordered us to turn the power off to the studios because we had a refeed. That cuts feeds to stations who then are calling, going, where's Alex Jones? we had already signed the contract, hadn't wired them the money yet for our backup satellites. We called them. They go, we already turned the satellites on last week, Alex. We got you. I said, oh, thank God. So my affiliate relations guy calls hundreds of radio stations, and most of them got flipped on within 30 minutes. Some are automated, so they didn't answer. They got pissed off, and we called us. We called them. But by the next day, by Friday, all of our stations were back on. But literally, we got hijacked, and that's why people are following me at Real Alex Jones on X and at AJN for Alex Jones Network at AJN Live. But they have said in the news, you can pull these up, that once they're done doing this to me, they're going to do it to people like, quote, Tucker Carlson and Glenn Beck. And I'm going to find those clips from 2 years ago when they won their fake judges. I'm going to send those to you. But this is so dangerous. This is so crazy. And again, I remember Ron Paul, who I love. Been on my show probably 100 and something times. And when this was all going on a couple of years ago, I called to have him on as a guest. He'd been ignoring my calls. And he said, Alex, I'll come on, but no more Sandy Hook. And I said, Doctor, I haven't covered it in years and years. I said, I don't talk about it. And he goes, Alex, it's everywhere. Don't tell me you're not talking about it. And I said, Doctor, and this is the last thing, we learned when they won the fake cases that a top PR firm out of New York, when as soon as Trump won in 2016, ran these thousands of stories and articles, thousands, saying I was attacking him, coming after him. They were raising money for their gun control group, who, by the way, is funding the Onion's takeover. They were on Good Morning America. And it's all just a Democratic Party gun control group using the families for PR. They used me saying I was attacking them for raising over $100 million, they're now reporting. They got $75 million from Remington. And so that's how they made themselves pertinent, was connecting themselves to me and then to Trump and kept themselves relevant. And so that's what this was. And I didn't understand it until I've been through this. So I don't blame other people for saying, oh, yeah, it's terrible what Alex did. Folks, I didn't do it. Okay? And so I'm just telling you, this is how their psyops work. And it's like saying Trump says the KKK are very fine people. He didn't say that. He said they're terrible people 30 seconds later. So the truth is people now understand the lawfare. They understand how the scam works. And I was told Wednesday that Elon Musk was upset. I'm going to leave it at that, at Mar-a-Lago with Trump. The next day, his lawyers showed up. They've entered the case. They've asked for all the files. I've been told I'll leave it at that. And I'm going to be meeting either today or tomorrow. Well, let's just say some people here in Austin that work very closely with Mr. Musk. Very closely. And so it's on. And so Trump and Musk and everybody understand this is existential. We're making our move against the tyrants. And I just want to thank Glenn Beck, because we've had our differences. And an idiot years ago, I'll bet this what I've done. Glenn has been a champion of free speech, and so have you. So I just really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so un-American. We're just, it can't stand. It just can't stand.